No, I don't do TikTok.
Which one would you stop at? Yes.
Just wait for 8 and then we'll start. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals for April 13th, 2022. We have just one application on our agenda, and that is the continuation of 45 Northfield Avenue. And the variance requested is one of maximum lot coverage, where the code requires 27%, and the lot currently is at 28.27% coverage, and the applicant is requesting 36.77%. So with that, I will give it over to Mr. Steinschneider, who is speaking for the applicant.
Okay, so I have to wait just for a minute, right?
1 minute.
Okay, but in the interim, while she's making this so that it can work, I want to apologize for some of the confusion at the last meeting in January. The survey that we had was not accurate. That was pointed out to us, unfortunately, at the meeting, which is not where I ever want to find out that we don't have accuracy. So we made sure that everything there, we worked with Dan, and as typical, Dan is very stringent of it being exactly right. And so we do have the right survey now, we have the right numbers, and there should be no confusion with it. So how do I make? I'm 71 years old. I don't.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, that's good. And then I've been told that if I go to view and I click on full screen mode, I can see the full screen. So this is the Julka residence, which is at 45 Northfield Avenue. It's a nice house. They've put a lot of effort into it. They've made improvements. It's on the corner, and it fits in fairly nicely with its neighborhood, as you can see here. I think this thing will point, maybe not. So interesting. So the outline in yellow is the site right on the corner of Bolton and Northfield. Here's just showing it on the tax map parcel, showing it how it fits in. As you notice also on the map, there are a lot of houses, and this is a fairly good size house, but there are a lot of houses in this neighborhood that are actually about that same size, and most of them are actually on lots that are a little bit smaller. Some of them are about the same size, but there's some big houses on smaller lots. So I think from a standpoint of what the house is about, I don't think there's really any issue is going to be different or bigger or anything like that. The main thing is just the fact that they want a terrace, which if we were only doing a terrace, which could be an outdoor recreational area with all the same stuff, we wouldn't need any variance because we're under the permitted site coverage for coverage itself. The reason we're here is because they would like to have a kind of canopy cover over it so that it'd be useful in other times of the year, extending the season, and also being able to use it when it's drizzling or something like that. Here's the math, which is all on the sheets that you were given, which showing the building coverage existing is 28.27, as the chair mentioned. We're proposing 36.77, which is an 8.5% difference. In the numbers themselves, it's actually, if you start doing what percentage of that over, it's more than 8.5%, but it's an 8.5% difference. The lot coverage, the existing is 48.88%. And even though we're adding 584 square feet for this terrace, the increase is actually, I have the math somewhere, I think. The increase is 11 square feet. Because what we've done is we've removed additional paving on the site that's there now. We'd be taking that off. So we were actually trying for that kind of clean wash on it, so it wouldn't be any increase. I don't know if there's anything on that. Just some photos. The house on the right is their front. This is looking at it from the corner. Going back, just kind of as we go around it. This is the back. So you see, that's the back door that you'd walk out on the terrace. The terrace fits, the structure of the terrace fits under that overhang. So it's kind of, the idea is to have that come right up against the house and be a fairly low profile. More shots of the back. And then going some of this is actually looking into that little L piece that goes over where their shed is and play area. And then this is actually going to the next street over and looking back. So the house that you see kind of poking up behind the White House, that's their house. That's the fence that's alongside. So the terrace with the canopy on it, you'd see kind of over that fence. I don't think you'd probably drive by and never really pay attention to it from this standpoint. This is the Northfield view, looking at the house on the corner. This is, looking at the character of the street and where the houses are. Again, the houses in this area, for a relatively small lot area, there are a lot of nice sized houses. This is looking back towards the subject property from, looking down Northfield. So obviously that the backyard doesn't factor into that in any way. This is across the street from the house, showing houses that are fairly close to one another. Which I think is a really nice character of this neighborhood. Just some more shots of that. And let's get into something that's real. And that's real, but the purpose of talking about the design. These are the drawings that we submitted. I think we really don't need to talk about much until we get to this, which is the plan. Actually, I have that in a larger scale. So on the right is the plan of the terrace itself. It's a rectangular terrace, 32'7" by 20'6.5". It has an outdoor fireplace. There'll be a small cooking area with a sink, an outdoor kitchen, and there'll be skylights, 8 skylights on it. So you'd be getting the light coming down. The drawing on the left shows that roof with the skylights. It's a low pitched roof, intentionally so that it doesn't have a large mass. This is the 4 elevations, but I've also got them kind of blown up individually. So this is looking from Moulton Street, seeing the back of the fireplace, the roof. You see how it kind of tucks it in underneath that overhang and carries that line across. The low pitch of the roof keeps it under the windows, so no changes would need to be made to the house. This is looking at the view from the backside. This is like a heavy timber construction. So it would be, it would be an interesting looking piece of structure. More bridge-like, if we were talking about bridges before, in terms of its connections. This actually uses split ring connectors in larger pieces of wood, so that the bolts that go through don't get split, don't split the wood. So it's kind of a fun way to build something. It's not quite, peg system shaker, but it's closer to that than some high tech. And then this is kind of showing a section cutting through the roof, showing how the skylights work, bringing the light into the area below. And then this is just a rendering that shows what it would look like when it was built. So if you've got any questions.
Was there an effort to, or did you try doing a version of this within the zoning?
We're already over the existing house has 28.77. I think it's 28.77, 28.27, where 27 is permitted. So we don't have any additional building that we could do that would be compliant.
No, I'm saying, how much smaller would the terrace and the covering have to be to avoid needing this variance?
0. The terrace is not limited. The terrace would be the same size. The canopy, any square footage we add with any kind of canopy over it would be making it further exceeding what's permitted.
But what about making it smaller? That's what I'm asking.
You mean taking part of the house off? If,
No, I guess I'm not following.
yeah, the existing house is 28.27% of the lot coverage, where 27% is permitted. So right now, the house itself is 1.27% bigger than what's permitted in the zoning district. So if we were to build anything else on the property, we would be increasing that nonconformity.
Padding, so.
Yeah.
The issue is the canopy, obviously. The sides are, it looks like there's a covering on this. one
Well,
side.
there's the fireplace.
Okay. it's open in
And the
front.
client is thinking of maybe not having the fireplace. The main thing is that it's very open. It's not, I don't think it'll read as a building. It'll read as an object in the yard. And it's the exact same use with a lot area that's permitted. And the only real difference here is that if it was a grizzly day, you could still use it.
I guess what, from this distance.
Yeah.
Roof makes it read like a building,
Roof is a building. There's no doubt that this is a building.
right? So it does read like a building. And it reads like an extension of the house
Right.
that is, it might be open on the side, but because of the way that roof is structured, and it's an attractive roof, don't get me wrong, but it's a roof.
Right. But I think it's like an open canopy feeling structure. So I don't think if we enclose this, I think it would make the building look much bigger. I don't think this contributes in that same way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I see that
Well,
same way.
where we have to get to on it is this somehow going to create some kind of an adverse condition for neighbors? And if it is, what's the weight of those versus the weight of the benefit to the property owner? And I've had a pretty tough time putting anything on the negative side that I can't already do without a variance. So somebody could say, well, if they have parties here, I could hear, they could have music playing too late or something. There could be lights, so those kinds of things can happen whether this has a roof or not. So in terms of any potential complaints that someone would have, and we have noticed on this property actually twice. So we've sent 2 letters to every neighbor. And unless there are people who are calling in, which is certainly a possibility. So far, no one's expressed a concern about this or asked to, go over it. So if I'm looking at this being something that would be pretty fun for the family to have, and not anything that would be adverse to the neighbors or the community, had no adverse impacts on the neighborhood or the community, it seems like it would be a reasonable thing for them to be approved to do.
Well, but fitting into the neighborhood is also a requirement, which is why at the end of
Yep.
the last meeting, both Bruce and I asked you to put some context and some numbers on that relating to neighboring properties.
Right. No one has something like this. So,
But
Yeah.
no, in terms of lot coverage.
okay,
And, I went on the Westchester map and I can find one property that has 38% lot coverage.
yeah,
And that's a much smaller piece of property where, in a sense, something large on a smaller piece of property is going to appear larger. This happens to be a large piece of property. And most large pieces of property are well under the 27% limit on the
Okay.
ones that I looked at.
right. I
wasn't trying to make a case or not make a case.
Sure.
I was looking at properties that look
And-
large
and-
visually.
And one of the challenges in this, as you guys know, is getting really accurate numbers for what that is. I mean, one of the concerns I have when we start taking off the town of Greenberg, GIS, is they're using their system. And so when you start trying to compare it, you don't really, unless you go and visit the houses and see what the, square footage is and how it's being used, the numbers don't always, indicate really a fair comparison. I know there are bigger houses.
Perhaps within 1% or 2.
Right.
That could be an error, but,
Okay.
10 points over is 10 points over. Or 8 or 12.
Family still gets the benefit of the terrace.
I think having this covered makes a real difference in the usability, particularly in kind of the unusual world that we're living in right now, and people being able to get together and do stuff. I know that I have not gone to my son's house in Ossining, for a meal that hasn't been served outdoors. I'm trying to suggest, and just about at the point where I'm starting to suggest we have Easter indoors. My grandson, who's in nursery, not even nursery school, it's like 3-year-olds. One of the kids came down with COVID. So now all of the kids are quarantined for 10 days. So, I think it's a real issue. I think, having, kids and a family and wanting to be able to do things and having extended family in the area, I can see his desire and why he'd want to do it. Makes sense to me.
It's raining, you're still gonna get wet. If it's windy, you're still.
If it's windy and terrible, but if it's a nice drizzly day, you could sit outside and have a very nice time with everybody, socializing, inviting all the neighbors over for some really good cooked food, and, members of the boards and so. Just
If I may, can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi, this is Moni and Ranu. We're the homeowners. I appreciate your time tonight. So yes, the exact reasoning was we do have a lot of extended family. I've lived here for since 1983. I've been a resident of Ardsley and Dobbs Ferry. We have a lot of family in the neighborhood. I grew up in the neighborhood. I left the neighborhood and I came back just so I could, be a part of the school system and be a part of the neighborhood. I only left for a couple of years, but we love the neighborhood. We love the area. I've got a brother that lives a block away from me. I've got 2 uncles that live within 1.5 miles. So we've got a very large family that does accumulate. So the biggest issue has always been, since COVID, and some of these family members are older family members, and having them come inside the house has been, tougher and tougher. And, we're trying to do as much Zoom as possible, but I think the full intent really here is to have an outdoor space. So we don't have, we can all be in externally, we can, still enjoy our presence and actually, see our faces and be involved with each other. And not only that, I think the weather is always an issue. So we'd like to use this year round. And to be able to use it year round, there's snow, there's rain, there's all types of condensation. I think we were trying to do this as minimally as possible with, the least amount of obtrusiveness. So it's still open. So it feels like an outdoor area. So we still get the air going through, through the actual structure. And the other thing is it's going to be an area where at least the kids can have some friends over. My kids are in the school system, and it's unfair that they have to go over to their friend's house, to enjoy the outdoors. We'd love to have, our friends, our kids' friends come over our house and, enjoy our backyard as well. That was the intent. And again, we're trying to do it as minimally as possible, by at least just having a covering and not building an outdoor space, which obviously we're not requesting at this point.
One question, Ranu, that you and I had talked about, but it's been a while. Where are you at with the fireplace?
So, I would love to have a fireplace just so at least I can have year round.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something the board, doesn't, if they say, I don't think that makes sense, I'd be open to maybe a gas burning, not a wood burning, just like a smaller structure.
Yeah, you mentioned, the idea of that, Bruce, that you have the fireplace creates some sense of closure. I'm wondering if that makes a difference in your concerns.
I have other concerns.
Okay.
The whole, it's the gestalt of it. It's not a particular element one way or another.
Are there any negatives that I'm missing on this of how this would adversely affect somebody?
Well, contextually fitting in with the neighborhood, size-wise. That's my prime concern. I do think that the fireplace as presented also looks like a wall, so that it looks much more like an enclosed structure. I don't think I'm inclined to vote for it either way, but I'd be more inclined if the fireplace were not there.
Well, obviously, we were giving up the fireplace. I'd rather give it up to get the yes vote. So that's just logic.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have just a feeling that, you know, we don't want the new normal to be, I mean, a lot of houses have terraces and pretty much anybody could see it as being desirable for the same reasons that your client does. And I respect, you know, it's not a crazy thought, but I think just in terms of how it affects structures, it's something for us to be concerned about.
I can see a concern. I guess the question I'd ask is if people started having something like that, would that be an adverse thing in the village? Would we start saying, oh my God, look at how these people are putting these canopies over their recreational area? I mean,
Can I ask another question? Just out of curiosity.
you can ask anything.
I can't. I will.
I know you will. I'm well versed in that, Jeremy.
Have you looked into a retractable awning, which I assume wouldn't involve zoning of any kind? And, you know, could be used on days when it's, you know, you've planned something and it's inclement that day?
You know, I haven't, but a question I have for Dan perhaps is if this was an open roofed structure and all that you had on this was the ability to support a retractable roof of some sort, would that make any difference in this?
No, it's still a structure.
Would something like that make a difference to the board members? I mean, I don't know that you couldn't do that. I mean, the only apprehension I have, because I've done it, often with houses that we've done in West Hampton, places like that, is we have a canvas kind of structure that can unroll, and you can usually what you're doing there is sun. You know, trying to have a place you can sit outside as much as everybody wants to go to the beach and be in the sun. You know, after a while, you know, I have a nice little thing up here that is the result of too much sun. I don't know if that would make a difference to you if it was something that was retractable.
Well,
I mean-
you know, I haven't explored this myself, but
Yeah.
I'm envisioning that there are things that where it doesn't require a permanent structure, or where, you know, where there's something that just affixes to the house and, you know, can be sort of rolled out as needed and then rolled back in.
We used to have neighbors that had one, and
Yeah.
there's a real trouble with wind, you know,
Yeah.
even with ones that are, you know, maybe come out 8 or 10 feet from the house.
Right.
You know, wind can rip the whole thing off the house.
Yeah, we
Not-
luckily
not only that-
passed, you know, we passed up on a project that we didn't take it on because we were busy, and it was for somebody who wanted to do one of those on their terrace in Manhattan. And they didn't really understand the wind, and the whole thing came loose. And when it's coming loose on a, you know, something 10 stories in the air and going to the street below, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. So I think that's an issue of concern, but I'm sure there'll be some way of doing something like that. But I think Renew, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, well, just the thought of a rollout structure. I'm thinking if there's actually condensation on top of this structure, it's going to be heavy, especially if we're using it at the same time. I don't think it's going to be practical at all. It wouldn't make sense just because it will just accumulate the condensation and just hold it. As a matter of fact, I think we did have something similar, and it would just kind of way down in the middle, and it would just be a puddle right in the middle of the actual. It was like but it would just literally accumulate in the middle. Yeah, a pergola, and it would just accumulate right into the middle. And aesthetically, I don't think it would look appealing to the eye at all. I mean, compared to what we'd be doing here. And just so we're on the same page, the front of the house has a patio as well. So I think it would be like an even move with the house as far as, a consistency rather with the house with, having something similar of like a roof in the back. And that was the thought process with this structure.
I mean, I just look at this as a positive thing that somebody could have on their house, and I see it being really nice in the neighborhood. I don't see it as anything that would be deleterious or have adverse impact. And and I'm not saying I do understand it, because as you know, I'm not, nor have I ever played one on television, an attorney. And I know there are attorneys that are sitting up there right now. So the way I'm assuming this works is if you don't have an adverse impact, and I don't know that it would, the fact that it would be 38% of building coverage, particularly given the fact that this is an open structure instead of a closed structure, I'm not sure that that hits that adverse impact that balances something out with the benefit to the community and to the family.
That's a matter of opinion.
Of course.
It's a matter of law, actually, to some extent. It is
Yeah.
a significant over of the zone. Obviously, that's why you're here for a variance.
Right.
Obviously, it's the ability to give a variance, but when a variance is of a certain magnitude, it is a significant impact.
And quite frankly, it's easier for us to grant a variance when other properties are in the same condition that you're asking for.
Yeah.
And we have no evidence of that. In
No,
fact, we have evidence to the contrary.
well, I don't think obviously we can look at things. We know there are some houses in the neighborhood that are bigger, and we know there's some that aren't, but we haven't
don't- actually,
provided,
for the record, we
and
don't.
we haven't provided that evidence, which
Correct.
we can certainly do if you want us to do that. The challenge I had.
We wanted you to do that last time.
Okay, and I apologize, because and I can certainly provide that for next meeting. The hesitancy I had on it, I'll be very, candid on it, was that I was going to be trying to say, this is so different than anything that we're looking at with that. I really do think it falls into a totally different kind of category. So it's kind of, if there were other people with open things on their houses, and I could point to those, I think that would make sense. Saying that this house over here has a bigger volume of house compared to this, I don't know how that really compares, but I can certainly provide that information.
Patty, if you don't mind, could you switch to the picture of the house that shows how it exists today? The back of the house?
Yeah, I'm going. Almost there, right?
There it is.
Yeah,
There it is.
that's a good
Okay.
one. Yeah,
So just so I can let the board understand, I think the way the rendering was, it was showing a much larger portrayal. So if the board can see where the patio is right now, as far as the bricks, as far as the pavers,
yeah, right.
that is the extent of, right. So the rendering seemed a lot larger in comparison, but if you can see, comparatively speaking, we're only going out to where the pavers are the widest, which is about, Patty, I believe that was 12 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
I think we went out 16.
16 feet. I apologize. 16 feet.
Yep.
From the rear of the house. And then the house just keeps going. And then we have, we will still have, a lot of greenery. We'll still have grass. We'll still have a walkway going to the driveway, and then the driveway beyond. So I think the rendering does seem a lot larger in that picture that we had. And that's probably why it seems like a large structure. But I think comparatively speaking, it's not going to look obtrusive at all. I mean, I didn't want the structure looking abnormally large. I wanted to kind of fit. Yeah. Oh, Patty, if you can just go back one more. I think you just had it. Sorry. One more. Yeah. Okay. So if the board, no, right there. Yeah. If the board can see there's where the patio, we had, this is when the snow, when there was actually white stuff on the ground, but where the patio is the largest, it's about 16 feet coming out there, and there's going to be a lot of grass, so it's not going to look. Yeah, we're definitely removing the pergola and the structure, all that exists on there, which just seemed to fall apart.
And there'll be grass there.
Right. And so if you guys cannot almost imagine, it's about 16 feet coming from the back of the house. but 3 of it, which is underneath the house. And so it's really about 13 feet coming out from the furthest the house is. And then we'll definitely have a lot more space in the back. But again, my heart, the house next door to me is a lot smaller. Obviously, that's why it looks, larger. I did build a house, in 2008, and I was, was fortunate enough to get some approvals off the board at that point. It used to be a big 3-family house, and I didn't, I wanted it for myself. So, we converted a 3-family house to a 1-family house, so we could live here and, enjoy, a peaceful community. And again, I don't see any negative impact, because I believe somebody would definitely have voiced their opinions at this point. I don't see anything negative at all. I'm really just covering a space that I'd be using, so at least I could get more practical effect of it for the whole year. And I'm doing it in a way so at least it's open in all the way, all around, all 3 directions. And if the board has an issue with the fireplace, I'm very amenable to actually changing that. Maybe if we can get a smaller, so it doesn't go all the way up, maybe a fireplace that just goes up maybe 5 feet or something, a gas burning, maybe, Patty, is that something that's?
Yeah, we could do, I mean, something like that would be viable. We could
running a
also
gas line.
look at putting it against the wall in the house. Since it doesn't need to have a flue going up. It could be under your kitchen window, and then it wouldn't even enter into the, closing off the openness of the structure.
Sure.
And Patty, does this require AHRB approval too, or because it's in the rear, it doesn't require?
No, it'll go to planning and AHRB.
I would just ask my fellow board members, would it be different if it went to AHRB first? The design, the mass of the structure, I think, is an issue from a design point of view. I assume that's because of the weight of the roof. When you have a massive beam across.
Well, I'm also looking for this to look like it's strong.
Yeah.
It's got, there's a look that we want for it. I mean, we could probably use lighter stuff, but it might look kind of icky.
Wondering if the mass creates an issue as well. So if it went through a design review first, or I don't want to make you jump through boards. but-
I would be perfectly willing. I mean, we're gonna have to go to the ARB anyway, so if you'd like to get their input on it, that'd be fine.
I can only speak for myself. The way it stands now, I will not vote for it. It's the massing, it's the extent of the variance of the lot coverage, it's the solidity and appearance of the structure. So some of it is not our purview, strictly speaking, some of it is architectural, that's not, but I have a problem with it strictly from a zoning perspective as well. So for me, it's not something I'm comfortable approving. Phrased differently, I'm not comfortable approving.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I hear what the applicant says. It'd be nice to have an outdoor covered space year round. Well, they do have one on the front of the house. It's not quite as large,
It's actually quite small. Yeah.
but you can combine that with indoor space from time to time. And to me, with the massing of the roof, just makes this the entire structure too big for the neighborhood. We have no evidence to the contrary. The house next door is on a much smaller lot and has the
Yep.
same lot coverage as this house before expanding it.
I mean, do you want me to put that information together?
I've looked at what I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how you putting numbers together would come up with anything different. And obviously you don't either, because you didn't bring it for us,
Well,
on request. So
right.
I don't see where it's going to lead us.
Jeremy?
I agree with my colleagues on this one. I don't think, I do think there's an adverse impact. because of the dissimilarity. And I don't think there's, the applicant needs the burden of showing that, the benefit to the applicant or the needs of the applicant outweigh that.
I still have trouble putting any negative weight on that scale. I mean, when you say it's because it's going to be technically bigger because it's got a covered roof, it's still an open structure, outdoor structure. It's not, I mean, usually when we're talking about the building, it's the concern that the bigger the house is or the building is, the more activity it holds and the more you're going to have, more kids you're going to have in the schools, things like that. So,
No, that's not right, Patty.
okay,
The village doesn't let small houses be built right next to larger houses. There's a certain continuity that is wanted, and desired, so that if it's too big or too small, it's too dissimilar for a neighborhood. And that's what this project, I think, would be creating.
okay. I mean, I think we're going off, I mean, there's nothing in the village that precludes somebody from building a small house next to a big house.
If I may, I mean, again, I think the neighborhood's changing a lot. Neighborhoods, we're definitely, there's a lot more development, there's a lot more, renovations. And if the board's concern is dissimilarity with my neighbors, I mean, what I can offer is putting up more foliage, more, greeneries to at least landscaping to offer some sort of, substance to intervene. As far as sizing, I mean, there's a bigger house on the block.
Yeah.
At the end of the block, there's a bigger house, than my house. So I don't know. As far as disadvantage, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your meaning. You're saying the first board member that was not voting to approve. I didn't understand your reasoning. If you may repeat, could you please repeat yourself just so I understand what the reasoning was?
I think you're asking me, and it is.
Yes, I apologize.
Along the lines of what Peter said about, Mr. Hoffman, Chairman Hoffman said about similarity and dissimilarity, but it's also every homeowner has the right to request a variance, but not every variance has to be granted. It is a discretionary
Correct.
process based on criteria. And one of the criteria is similarity, dissimilarity. Another criteria is the absolute magnitude of the variance request. So it's context and magnitude. And I have trouble with both of them. There's a lot of people in this community who are complaining about the number of variances that are being given and how it's changing the character of the community. I hear it all the time, and that's not a reason to deny or approve this one, but it's important to keep in mind that context and magnitude are important issues.
No, I understand. I just didn't understand, particularly to my situation, what exactly was the reasoning. So if it was, you're saying it's too large of a structure?
It's too far over the permissible limit. The percentage.
Yeah, it's a big ask, is what he's saying.
Sure.
If you were here asking for a 2%, over the limit, that's a lot different than what you're asking for.
It would still be the context question, but
So
most
I
of the times we get a variance request, it's 2%, it's 5%. This is a much bigger ask than we normally get and normally approve.
What's our percentage, Patty? What's our
Well,
percentage? here?
There's two ways of looking at it. One is the one that's deceptive that I cited earlier, which is that if I take the math and I subtract the 28.27 from the 36.77, we're going 8.5% greater, and an 8.5% variance. I think the board has, indicated in many previous meetings would be, up to 10% is a pretty reasonable request. 10 to 20, maybe. You start getting over that, and it's a much bigger ask. The reason the issue is that if you do it a different way, which is, in my opinion, the correct way to do it, you'd be figuring out how much of a percentage, 36.77%, is above 27%, which is the requirement. And I can't do the math quickly in my head, but it's like 40 something. So that's, to me, I wouldn't, if somebody was coming in, unless they were talking about doing this to provide housing that we need. What I would be doing is, as I've said, I think this is a very different kind of thing. In fact, this is when I started going really through this, I think
But
it's
the
something.
code doesn't.
Right. Well, and I think that's something that perhaps, and that's not your board, and I understand, and it's not your purview, which is fine. But is there a reason that they don't allow open structures to be counted in the other category instead of as building? And there are many communities that, they look at it that way. In fact, even Dobbs flirts with it because you're not required to include a front porch that's less than, I think, 85 square feet.
A portion of it.
Right. So, that doesn't count towards your building coverage. So, there's the feeling that, exterior structures, open structures are different than closed structures. And that it's just the reality of it. I think buildings that have a lot of porches on it can have a very high number if it was building volume, but the reality is they feel very open and they don't feel overbearing or intrusive on the neighborhood at all. But that's my personal opinion. It's hard for me to have anything that's not a personal opinion. I don't have any official standing here.
So did you have the opportunity to participate in January when this was on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I'm going to defer to you because of that, since I didn't have the opportunity to hear from the first.
Should
I
we ask,
will say.
should we ask if there's anyone else from the community?
Yeah.
We should turn, so I just wanted to alert you that I'm going to probably defer to you.
Yeah, if there's anyone from the community that wants to be heard on this, please raise your hand now and
There's no one here.
no one.
Forever hold your peace.
Or forever.
No,
I apologize for.
In person or virtually.
Right thing to do.
One of us make the motion?
Oh, I thought
We're
these
gonna
guys
close the
were.
hearing, or?
Yeah, move to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's, And I move that the application be denied because it's a substantial variance that, and is also, I think, out of character with the neighborhood in terms of lot coverage.
Second.
All in favor? All against? And we have one abstention.
And the board is authorizing me to put together a resolution enumerating the discussion and your decision.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Valerie.
If I may, can I just ask how we could make a difference so we could get an approval?
I'm not sure that you can, in that to make it such a less substantial variance, I think you would you'd be having a very small roof. But that's up to your
Because I'm hearing
designer.
The issue, I'm not voting on this, the deck itself is not your concern, the roof is the concern, so.
Right, you can have the deck that you have the plans for, I believe. Isn't that correct, Pat?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you could put as many umbrellas and tents,
You can put a
Yes.
fire pit on the deck and.
Yeah.
do all that. You just can't have a permanent structure that makes it safe.
Right.
In my personal opinion.
And move to close. All in favor? Okay. And what time is it?